AI and automation have arrived, and they're going to transform society forever. From cashiers to CEOs, more jobs are getting replaced by the machines every day. The rise of new AI models is put on the accelerator, placing hundreds of millions of jobs at risk. But as the world becomes more robotic, more technology focused, what place will there be for humans? Just how many of us will lose our jobs? And if so, who will buy anything? How will the economy even work? Well, today in this video, we're going to find out what's going to happen to humanity in the new age, and how the economy is going to function in a completely different way. Now, it seems like every year there's some new thing that everyone is predicting will completely take over the future. Most of them get overhyped and they end up fizzling out, or it takes decades to see any real changes. AI and automation are different. As we'll see, they're already changing society in a massive way. This is just the beginning. Tons of different jobs and industries are either about to change forever or they already have. We mentioned cashiers earlier, and they're one of the jobs at the highest risk of automation. In most chain shops and supermarkets, it's already happened, and we all see it today. It's very rare to go to any store now without any self-checkout machines, and if they don't have them, it just seems outdated. 2023 was actually a record year for these machines, with over 200,000 new ones added to the shops across the world. And there have been mixed feelings about them ever since they were introduced, but most people at least tolerate them. In a 2021 survey, 60% of people said they prefer them to the regular checkout. Most of the time, they're faster than other methods, more efficient, and if you're in your own head, you don't have to speak to anyone. Even if all of this is just a minor improvement over an incredibly slow system, people do prefer it, especially the corporations using them. The amount of money they save is astronomical. What used to take paying 20 people can now be done with 20 machines and only 2 employees to oversee them. It doesn't matter if they lose tons of stock to theft, which is very common with the machines, as they still easily pay for themselves over time. It also doesn't matter if the whole thing does end up being a lot more annoying for the consumer. The process hasn't been fully automated really. The machines only take some of the load, leaving the rest of it up to you, meaning corporations make you do the work and cut out the costs while also making a profit from it. And this small example is a glimpse into a future of automation on a much larger scale. Instead of the whole process getting automated, people's jobs will get replaced partly by machines and partly by passing the work onto the consumers instead. It's something you see in another category of jobs that's about to disappear: customer service. Years and years ago, if you called a company's customer service line, you would immediately be talking to another person who could understand your very specific question. But now automation has made it so you need to go through 5 different layers of machines before you're even in the queue. And that's if the bot on the other end can even understand what you're saying. It's an absolute nightmare for everyone. And it clearly doesn't matter if the service gets better, as the only thing that matters is whether it makes a profit. AI might make these problems a little bit better, but it will also replace lots of the things they still need real people for. And it's already happening. Take the Indian e-commerce company Dukan, which was worth $70 million in the last evaluation. And in 2023, their CEO took to Twitter to brag about how he'd been able to replace 90% of the customer service staff with an AI program, reducing the company's costs by 85%. You can feel the joy oozing out of his announcement that he can fire 90% of one of his departments. While other CEOs might hide it a bit better, they're still salivating at the possibilities as well. This is something which will soon happen to the entire customer service industry. Eventually, even representatives in physical stores could get replaced by a touchscreen and a chatbot. It's yet another whole category of jobs that will soon just disappear under the steamroller of automation and AI. Data entry jobs are going the same way too. Between 2014 and 2022, the amount of people working these jobs in the US fell by over 20%, from 375,000 to 295,000. It's already a dying industry. Advances in AI will push this over the edge. The more procedural and consistent the work is, the more likely it is that a computer can do it instead. To go a bit further, administration and other office jobs are also destined to be replaced. This category encompasses millions of jobs. Lots of them could easily vanish in the next 10 years. Some will survive, of course. If you need specialist skills or you need to deal with lots of different problems, it's much harder to automate. But the ones lower down on the ladder will almost certainly go, which will just make it harder for young people to get an entry-level job. A lot of the time when new technology comes in, it creates more jobs than it replaces. When we started using cars instead of horses for transportation, it didn't upend the economy because there were new roles for people to take. It was the same with the Industrial Revolution before that. But what will happen with AI? Will the same thing be the case? Well, it's a lot more complicated with AI, and it isn't a black and white picture. One of my favorite TV shows is Mr. Robot, and you can probably tell from the channel. But did you see the mail service they use in the show? Well, they're actually today's video sponsor, Proton VPN, the VPN service that's taking the world by storm with its massive global network. With over 6,500 servers in more than 110 countries, Proton VPN has the most extensive coverage available, making it the go-to choice for anyone looking to enhance their online experience. Want to catch up on your favorite Netflix shows that aren't available in your country? Proton VPN allows you to change your public-facing IP address so that you can stream content from anywhere in the world, whether it's national TV programs or international sports events. Proton VPN has got you covered. And for those who value privacy, Proton VPN is a must-have. Whether you're an activist, a journalist, or someone who just wants to browse privately, Proton VPN helps protect what's yours. It's one of the few tools out there that truly fights back against big tech and protects your personal information. But as you can see in Mr. Robot, Proton is way more than just Proton VPN. Proton also has a whole bundle for you to de-Google your life from Mail, Pass Manager, Proton Docs, and Drive. And it doesn't stop there. Proton VPN also comes with an integrated ad blocker that's completely open source and uses only the strongest, most secure protocols like WireGuard and OpenVPN. Their app's code is completely open source and publicly available for inspection online. They've also commissioned independent security experts to audit all of their apps. You can actually read their analysis on their website, but it should be clear that Proton will never share or sell your information with third parties. So why wait? Get Proton VPN today and enjoy unrestricted, secure, and fast internet access no matter where you are. Check them out today using my link in the description below. And for new users, if you use the link in the description below, you'll get 55% off using my link. Now, we've seen how new generative AI models like ChatGPT are almost perfectly suited to basic coding. Give them a single prompt and they'll do hours of work within seconds. With a bit of editing by someone who knows what they're doing, it's fit for purpose. Just like the self-checkout machines, it isn't a question of the complete replacement of people. It's just that one skilled coder could use advanced AI to do the work of 5 of 10 people who are new to the field. It means that even if AI can't do 100% of the tasks associated with a job, it raises the bar exponentially as to what the standard is in the industry, which can in turn replace tons of people. A lot of these jobs aren't things people should really be spending their whole lives on anyway though, because nobody really wants to be a cashier or work in data entry when they're growing up. And in 50 or 100 years time, when the dust has settled, the world may actually be thankful that we've escaped from all this menial labor. But until that point, the economy is going to have to undergo some huge changes. And the main question will be, who will be buying anything if nobody's really working anymore? As we may very well be in a world where not everyone is expected or needed to even have a job, simply because there just aren't enough of them to go around. So what are the various predictions for how bad the damage is really going to be? Well, there's lots of different estimates, but even the most conservative still mean that millions of jobs will get replaced. In the short term, it isn't looking good. It's generally agreed that tens of millions of jobs will be lost over the next decade to AI. A lot more will be impacted in some way, which means that some parts of the work will get automated. For customer service jobs, it means employees would only deal with the complicated problems that an AI can't solve. Even though most predictions think it will boost the global economy by trillions of dollars. So how does this make sense? If people are actually going to be replaced, then how will the economy go up so much if no one can buy anything? Well, this is where it gets interesting. As we've seen already with automation, when the job gets easier, there's far more competition. Before GPS was widely used, being a London taxi driver was an incredibly hard job. If you wanted to do it, you needed to memorize a complete street map of the city. GPS and ride-sharing apps tore through this barrier, meaning anyone with a car and a phone could adequately do the job. And the results were clear. London taxi drivers saw their wages fall by 10%. And it seems like AI might do this exact same thing to nearly every job there is, 60% of them in developed countries. The parts that can be automated will be taken over, leaving either less jobs or lower wages for the people who can still cling on. The paperwork that makes up tons of the workload for people like doctors or police officers will disappear, meaning there's less work overall. Only a few industries like teaching or agriculture are going to escape some level of automation, which again brings up the same massive question. How will the economy then continue to function? With so many people either out of work or struggling to make ends meet, it isn't clear how we're going to solve this. Corporations across the board have been taking record profits at the expense of almost everyone else, and so it doesn't seem realistic to imagine that they're suddenly going to share the money they'll make from the AI revolution. It's clear at this point that people are going to need to change the way they work. Physical labor will still be important, but it won't be as common. Basic office work and simple cognitive tasks are going to be far less important. It's what AI does best. Meanwhile, complicated tasks which need a lot of training or a good deal of natural ability will be in much higher demand. We've seen from history that these kinds of shifts lead to stagnant wages. After the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, when millions moved from agriculture to manufacturing, wages stayed at around the same level for 50 years straight. If this happens again, then the economic hardship we see today could continue for another 30 to 40 years before it corrects itself. In fact, this time it might even be worse. It's a simple truth that tons of people just aren't academically smart enough to make the transition. It's a pipe dream to imagine that we're going to train the millions of truck drivers that will lose their jobs to do something else. The jobs they could realistically work instead are disappearing. People without college degrees that lose their jobs can't really easily retrain in another field and often fall through the cracks. In the best of cases, they go on to disability for the rest of their lives. Often they just can't cope with losing their purpose, turning to drink or drugs, or simply just giving up. It's an awful tragedy that's going to be repeated over and over again if we can't find a solution. And this transition will leave tons of people behind, as most of us just don't have the skills or the natural ability to work the highly complicated academic jobs that AI will create. The AI trucks will need people to oversee the operation and make sure it's all running smoothly, even directly taking control of certain trucks if necessary. But it's not something that's going to be easy for anyone to pick up without specific training. The world is just getting too complicated for most people, but this could be one area where people could still find a niche. Instead of directly working as a cashier, shop assistants now often oversee a group of self-checkout machines. Instead of the job getting harder, it changed so that most of the work is guiding people through the process instead. As more and more of the world gets automated, we'll need tons of people to start working these jobs in other fields. Grandma's not going to be magically figuring all of this out herself. She's going to need some help. Because developed economies are mostly made up of service jobs, this is going to create more jobs than you might think. It's a niche that people with more human-centered skills are going to thrive in, and it could be a good way to transition people that aren't going to retrain as coders or complex system managers. The problem is that even if enough of these jobs get created, which seems unlikely, they often pay way less. In fact, we're going to see way less money in the hands of normal people in general. But again then, how will the economy continue to function? How can prices continue to go up and an economy start booming if nobody has any money to actually spend? We're at a crossroads right now. There's two main ways this can all play out. The first option could just be a complete disaster. Society continues on, no checks are in place, big tech AI companies get out of control, ethics departments are continually stripped, and lacking government regulation means we enter into a technocracy. Companies will pretend it's business as usual, but over time they'll cut out more and more of their employees, leaving the consequences for someone to deal with later on. If using AI makes a company 20% more productive, then they can fire 20% of their employees and maintain the same output. People won't even know it's AI either. They'll just get fired for quote underperforming instead. On this path, we'll see an outcry for big changes like self-driving trucks, but the small changes that make the difference when you put them together will go unnoticed. The media will blame the same tired old issues while more people get pushed out of the system every day. In this future, the profits from AI won't go to the people who need them. Corrupt governments will be paralyzed by lobbyists, making sure the corporations are keeping their profits in check. Meanwhile, they'll go bankrupt trying to deal with millions of newly unemployed people. Without those jobs, people simply won't have enough money to keep the economy going. Crime will skyrocket as people go into desperation. Taxes will barely be paid, police officers stripped away from the streets, and anarchy and lawlessness takes over society. The relative value of human labor plummets, meaning almost everybody shuts out of the economy without anything to keep themselves afloat, apart from stealing from one another, fending for themselves, and selling whatever they can to survive, which is an absolute recipe for chaos. People won't have anything to gain, so they won't have anything to lose. They'll vote for whoever says they'll make things better, the people offering the simplest solutions. It means a rise in extremism that will lead to unrest and eventually revolutions and even dictatorship and fascism. Or if it swings the other way around, communism. Now it might seem like that's far away, but all it takes is enough hungry people to upend the entire system. Suddenly the reality, the social norms that we live in today, just won't be able to exist. Key government services like policing, ambulances, law and order will just be abstract concepts that have no relevancy, and eventually the economic scales will tip back the other way just like they always have. But it would take decades, and it's impossible to say how many casualties there will be along the way. And of course, none of this is set in stone. There is an alternative to this global tragedy, but it's all going to hinge on what happens to the money and the value that AI is going to create. If it gets to the people who need it, it'll soften the blow significantly. There aren't any easy solutions, but there's a few things that could really help take the edge off this crisis. One solution that's been discussed, although not nearly enough, could be universal basic income, otherwise known as UBI. Using the profits from AI and incredibly well-maintained automated systems, which are projected to make trillions in profits, developed governments could simply give their citizens enough money to never have to worry about working, but also keep society in check and taxes paid. However, it's not just as simple as this. The loss of meaning in people's lives as they have no passion, no actual work to do, no career, no destiny, will make people feel apathetic and just lazy. An essential part of being a human is working towards something. which can't just be replaced by a monthly check handed out by the government. It'd be more like a band-aid than an actual cure, but it would at least make sure that people don't go hungry and AI wouldn't completely destroy their lives.